Welcome to Debt to Cinema. I'm Stephen Maltmanex.
And I'm Brian Gillis. Like most people, we love going to the theater and catching the latest releases. However, it can sadly put a big dent in your wallet.
Fortunately, living in the digital age makes the viewing possibilities endless from the comforts of home.
Many of these films that you can see right from your couch, we're ashamed to say we miss, despite labeling ourselves cinephiles.
So join us as one or both of us cross off a title from our list of shame.
It can be an all-time essential classic,
Or an underrated piece of cinema that's worth giving a shot.
hell, it might just be some trashy film we want the other's opinion on. So sit tight and join us as we pay off our debts. $1 at a time.
Just a small little, I guess, piece of trivia, but this is the second film in a row that I picked from director Peter Medak, someone who we did not really even know of
Nope, no
until
clue.
this show.
How did you stumble upon this film? How'd this land on your radar? Why did you pick it?
As far as how this got on my radar, I saw the first 10 minutes of this about a year ago, and it immediately got me interested. Like, someone showed it to me on their phone, and, like, they said, you got to check this out. Like, Peter O'Toole's in this. He's amazing. And it's really that first shot, like, right after you see all the credits there, and then the hammer just slams down and then cuts to black, and it's just silence. And it's just like those three shots in a row right away commands your attention. And then you see the crazy ass shit with the 13th Earl of Gurney just go fucking getting in a tutu and just spouting out random shit and then accidentally just hanging himself, like weird stuff like that. And I just saw that. I was like, you know what? I have to see this movie at some point. And I was struggling to pick something topical in regards to the election, which at the time of this episode, we don't know who's in the White House right now. We're recording on Sunday night, so we don't know who it's going to be.
This is not topical, man.
This is topical in the sense of, you know what? This whole entire political campaign has been a fucking madhouse. And I know that this movie is weird. I knew it was weird and crazy in some ways. And it definitely is in that respect of, like, there's some really weird shit that happens here. Not just in character, but I mean, there's random musical numbers that come up. Like, there's shit here that's just really weirdly crazy. And yeah, I just needed some madness. I needed a kind of circus, I guess, to sort of tie in with this entire political campaign from both sides, and so that's how I got here.
But this film
basically
is 100% British, like not just the cast and
British.
crew and all that, but just the fact that it's about the ruling class. It's about the earls and lords and how that's a succession and it's passed down through lineage. And in America, we got a democracy. It might not be direct, but we vote for the people in power. Whereas this is like, literally, it does not matter how fucking crazy you are, as long as you look normal, then you're fine.
No, like, that's literally a line at the beginning where the 13th Earl, like, he says, like, right in front of them, hey, we're all leaders, not necessarily of skill, but, just by sheer presence. Like, that's all we are. Like, and you can kind of say the same, I guess, at least about one of these presidential candidates, and a lot of people would argue over which one, depending on which side you fall on.
You have to be elected regardless. Here, it's like you have to...
Yeah, it's like you get it no matter what. But still, like,
you
the
have
fact
to
that
look a certain way, though. You have to act a certain way. You have to say the right things or the wrong things if people really hate you and you get the hate vote. But it's still, it's like you said, it is a circus here. Mm-hmm. Whereas in what's painted in this film, it's just, nope, this is just part of being British.
I mean,
you're the ruling class. You're just as crazy as everyone else.
Right when you start with that 13th Earl, though, like someone who's clearly, his ideals are not necessarily that different from Jack, who's the main character later on. But like, yeah, even before he
JC.
dies, like he makes it clear, is like, hey, by sheer strength, this is how we rule. This is how we dominate the whole strong prayer around the weak, that sort of thing. And then to see him at home, just living his crazy ass fucking lifestyle, just or not necessarily being of sound mind. It's like, yeah, I don't even know where to start with this as far as how to tie it in with this election, but that's about as much as you're going to get out of me. And it was not a very smooth pick, but you can definitely find the threads there. So that's why this is out at this time.
This film kind of reminded me in part of The Red Violin when you get that Ian Fleming, or not Ian Fleming, I mean Jason Fleming. There you go. For some reason, I was reminded of him, just the house and his lady and how fucked up he is and how weird that shit is. But except like everyone loves him and he's just revered and like he has a muse. And there's like a lot of this here because I don't know what the rating is now. I would assume it's R, but this is an X-rated film. And so I started making notes. I'm like, how could this be? I was like, okay, well, it just started with autofixation while wearing a tutu.
Part of the appeal. Like, I mean, come on. In the first 10 minutes of this movie, like, you're immediately intrigued. Like, what the fuck is this going to be?
No,
really? That first shot with the hammer coming down didn't get to you?
No, this film started off, brilliant. And I thought it was just like a fucking. Like, I was like, okay, it's called The Ruling Class. I just saw this guy's Changeling movie. It seems like this is
this is a very different movie.
Yeah, I was like, this just it seems like a very straightforward, serious 2.5-hour movie about like politics. I was like, okay, I get it. We're in politics right now. Makes sense. But then when it goes,
this is not A Man for All Seasons.
No, this goes so fucking bonkers. Like, that's one of the lines in the movie. Like, I wrote it down. Where the fuck is
Which line? Like, I could not keep track of like just the lines that acknowledge how insane this is, or just when you get to Peter O'Toole himself, like, all the crazy shit that he says. Like, I mean, just this, horny Jesus that's always trying to fuck anytime he has the opportunity. It constantly has his mind on sex.
On like, love. There's a difference. He does not seem like he...
Oh, he mentions it constantly. Like, even
not
casually.
Really.
Like it comes out of nowhere. Like, even when he's, like, about to, like, leave the room, he says, like, okay, enjoy yourselves while I'm gone. Relax, have sex. And then he just leaves, and then... It's that one funny bit, too, where then his uncle just all of a sudden just goes, my God, and then he comes back and is like, yes?
Well, it's like, if you love someone enough, you're probably going to have sex. And I think that's how he kind of just, like, correlates the God of love into reality. As I didn't get that from. I really loved that JC character. I thought he was just a really cool counterbalance to his family.
He's a very free spirit that, does want to love in every way possible, but, like, especially around women. Like, just when everyone's present, like, yeah, he wants to love to the fullest potential that you can reach there.
I actually wrote this thing down before he's revealed as Jesus. I was like, Peter O'Toole as the 14th Earl of Gurney, and then the note is, dressed like Jesus the monk. And, like, that's exactly what he fucking turned out to be. I think his first good line, who asks him? I think it's his cousin. It's, I don't know, the family's so confusing. But someone asks him, he's like, how do you know your God? And he goes, simple. Yeah. When I pray to him, I hear myself. I was
Which is brilliant.
I was like,
it's like,
yes.
Well, it makes sense.
It
you
totally
can see
makes
exactly
sense.
how he would get there, yeah. He can say something that sounds very godlike and then just throw something pretty vulgar, which I imagine in 1972 is kind of what got this the X rating. It's like, I think it was in that same scene. I didn't write it down, but like, he kind of describes what it's like to be God. He's like, well, it feels like I'm everywhere. Like, there's a moment where I could be accepting the Nobel Prize, or I'm at a conference somewhere in Rome. I could be raping a nun in Sumatra. I'm just God filled. It's like, wait, what? Like, that last one is just like, holy shit, and he just keeps carrying on like it's normal. Like, just stuff like that where you're just like, wait, did I just fucking hear what I thought I heard?
He
like,
has this
shit.
line way later where he's like, from the bottom, it's during the wedding. He's like, from the bottomless soul to the tip of my penis. I was like, that's such a good line. And then the bishop
is just stammering the whole time.
Yeah, his brother-in-law or his uncle-in-law, or where the fuck it is.
Yeah,
someone in the family.
Yeah.
Like, this film is the epitome of the whatchamacallit, the dysfunctional family just set within the ruling class of England. Like, it's just a straight up satirical look at how unjust our rulers are and how crazy you have to be, or how crazy you become when you're in a position of power. It's like I think it's
Well, it's like it's also very hereditary in the sense because
yeah,
his dad died and could have been just as crazy as it. Maybe
probably
really
more
fucked up.
crazy.
Like, because I tried rewatching that scene actually right after this just to like really see if you could if
I
what he
no, I
said like
made
sounded
sense
insane because
of
it seemed
I made
like
sense of what he was doing. It made like he
well, but like when you see Tucker as a character after a while,
uh
he just seems like he doesn't care and he's just putting up with the shit. Like and obviously it's a normal thing since he sets up the noose to him. Is like, oh, should I come back with a whiskey and a Coke after this? Oh, yes, yes. Like, so to some extent, like, yeah, there is sanity there, even if he's into his own autoerotic asphyxiation moments. But then again, is it kind of hereditary? Like, what's with the two? I don't know. Like, where does the line for
I don't
insanity
know.
go?
Like you can't totally just make sense of that. Like it's insanity. You're not supposed to. But like there's that whole thing where it's like artistic is a dirty word, and he's like, well, what about me in the ballet skirt now, huh? And it's like just
Like you sort of get everything that you need to know
yeah.
there of
It's
like he
the
had a repressed
way
childhood and that's how he ended up being the way he is.
the way he's dressed though, where he has like the full garb for like Britain, like he's part of the army, but then
I think he calls that a like that's what his procedure's called, a English breakfast tea or no
something
or
weird like
true
that.
royal English breakfast.
And so he's wearing that, but then on the bottom he's wearing the tutu, and then he has the noose around his neck, and he has a sword flailing, and he just has like there's this moment where, in the way I read it at the time was that, he's kind of talking, especially as a duke, or an earl rather, about like bringing the hanging back, which is like a running not gag, but it's a thing that is brought up multiple times throughout this film, especially towards the end, like that final monologue.
Yeah.
And so the way I saw it was that like he was so fixated on making hanging a thing again that it literally got his rocks off. Like he was that interested in it. And maybe he was interested in it because it got his rocks off. Like I don't know, but that's the way I saw it. And it kind of sucked that he died so early because he seemed like he had a lot to bring to the story, and you don't ever hear anything about him. And then once the family comes to town, like they're just as crazy. Like the uncle is painted as like this fine person. And you're like, okay, you're fucked up. Your wife is fucked up. Your son is
like, they
okay,
don't care
but
about
he's
each other.
boring.
They're all everything that they're doing is for personal gain. Maybe
Yeah.
that their son less so, who's just
He's just a boring person.
yeah, just very nosy and like not that memorable here. Like I guess says very British things.
Like
I
it's
don't know
hard
how to
to
put
say.
in like the least offensive way,
Yeah.
but like yeah, definitely just a very nosy, a suck up.
It's
I
hard to
guess that's a
say
good way to put it.
comedic relief because the whole thing is funny, and sometimes without even meaning to be. But yeah, the son is just like that extra little like sidekick. Like he's
Just
not.
completely not oblivious, but inept, I guess, in
Yeah,
some way.
it's like
Yeah.
Tucker is the perfect comedic relief. Like
Yes.
from like the ant dying where he like jumps up in the air. He's like one down. He's like there's one less of them. There's one less. Praise
Yeah,
the
well, I mean,
Lord.
just
Like,
how you set up his whole situation. Like, I love that when he gets the will,
Yeah.
and then it's being read to him. It's like, oh, and he just gets 30,000 pounds for free.
he just
And
forgets
he's
about
just
it.
very calm and
Yeah,
quiet.
forgets
and
about
like,
it.
he's processing it, and it's not until the guy just keeps reading the will. He's like, 30,000 smackers, yes, and he just fucking dances out of there.
He
And
has the
just-
first musical
he
number of the
doesn't
movie.
give a fuck when he announces Jack. Like when he just throws that vase, I'm just like, just every moment that Tucker has, like anytime he has like he backtalks him, like there a line that I love. What was it like? When the uncle asks who Mylock Holmes is, and he's just like Sherlock's brother, you fucking twat," or
Mycroft.
something like that. Yeah,
Mycroft.
I can't remember.
No, yeah,
what
he
the name
said
is
something like,
either.
yeah, he was like, yeah, that's Sherlock Holmes' brother, you like illiterate ponce or something like that.
something like
But
that.
like one of his best lines is just the crux of the film. He's like, rich snobs and privileged assholes can afford to be bonkers, which is totally true. Like if you're
Yeah.
already in a position of power, you're the son of someone well off. If you're the prince, look at Joffrey on Game of Thrones. Like as long as you're already where you have to be, you can be whoever you want to be. And you got to be pretty crazy to even want power to begin with.
Hey, we might have a leader like that in our democracy. Who knows?
Either one is going to be fucking ill suited, you know? Like one of them literally wearing the worst looking suits ever. I hate Hillary's suits. But yeah, it's hard. I don't even know. I doubt I'll ever watch this again.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
it's
But
so all over the place. It's way too long.
I agree
There's
there. Like this thing, it's based off a stage play that's very
yeah.
popular, and I know that James McAvoy was in a version of it recently in the UK,
Mhm.
but maybe it might work better on stage. I don't know, but this movie really needs an editor because like
Yeah.
it really is kind of one joke of just okay, Peter O'Toole thinks he's Jesus, and it's fucking funny
Well, it's
throughout, but
very funny, yeah.
like
Even when he
I
becomes
mean
Jack the
I
Ripper,
honestly
it's
like I
still
will
really funny.
forever I think insinuendo is something I'm going to try
Yeah,
to put in
I've
my
heard that
vocabulary
before.
now.
I've heard insinuendo.
Like I mean Kremlin plots and negative microbes. I don't think I'll forget those. But yeah, like even with him, like that joke really does drag because it's an hour and a half until you really switch things around and to he where he acknowledges that he's not Jesus. But
It's a little
I mean,
longer than
moments like
that. Like
well,
it's
like when
almost
you're
2 hours.
yeah, 2.5. Well, it's
No, I
pretty
mean
far, but
just
like
the
I mean, yeah, like
Jesus
you
thing.
don't need that moment where he pretends to levitate the table, or not pretends, but he believes it, and he obviously doesn't, and
You
they acknowledge that he doesn't. But it's like moments like that just don't add to anything. It's like, well, you really could have edited some of this stuff
even
out.
worse, like the wedding sequence, the evil god that shows up,
Yeah, this electric
the
god, like where they have this battle back
a
and
good
forth.
40 minutes of this could have just been scrapped and you wouldn't even care. Like Tucker becomes less and less interesting, less and less funny when you see him do more and more zany
Hmm.
things. Like his lines can only be so funny. And like the
Like I
wife,
don't need his line of him being a Bolshevik. Like it
yeah.
adds to nothing really. Like it's not gonna advance the plot. Other than maybe I guess that affects the country's state of mind at that point. That's very telling of 1972, I guess, or
I
even before then when this play was put together. But
I don't know. It's like it goes so crazy. Like you have that really cool like right before they consummate the marriage and you have this wife who's just her whole arrangement is so crazy. It's like okay, the uncle is having an affair with her. He
hmm
tried to push her onto his brother so he could have a new heir because Jack is so crazy. And then he ended up pushing her onto Jack and he was jealous. Like just
like
the whole thing
even
about
then,
that is
like she's
just
basically there for a kid, and
yeah.
she ends up loving Jack. But you do not even where it matters. Like you never really see that relationship grow
No.
or see why she loves him. She's just kind of blindly
Well,
defending
she
him.
loves
Like,
him. Like it's all part of that pre-consummation scene that I just mentioned. Like right before they have sex, she has that monologue where she's like undressing, really sexy, really nice,
yeah,
and she's like, like where would like mother would
rated X in 1972.
oh
That was
for
pushing
good
it.
reasons with that scene. He's like, no, mother never thought I would be here. Like look at me now. Like all I gotta do is get undressed. I don't want him to get undressed. Like we'll do this. But like that scene, like there's like two or three monologues like that I really liked. Like just not necessarily fourth wall breaks, but sort of like you could tell like oh this is a play and they were talking to the audience in these moments.
Like it's a soliloquy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in a movie, it's not a soliloquy, but yeah, it's 100% what it
No,
is.
it still is like when you're breaking the fourth wall and you're talking to the crowd. Like House of Cards has that. That's what they
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, I guess that's fair. Um, but just this film, I think enjoys being crazy. Like it's
Oh,
trying to show how crazy the ruling class is by just trying to top itself every other scene. Like when the vengeful AC/DC god shows up,
yeah.
when like Yahweh appears and he like
Like
eats the fucking glass and then the monkey comes up out of
it's not just yeah,
nowhere.
like
Like
the gorilla with the
yeah.
gorilla king top hat King Kong. That's what I was thinking. Like
And
just
then
throwing Peter O'Toole up and down. Like I mean,
the
I
electrocution
swear
in that scene,
the
like
biggest mistake I might have made was not smoking weed before this
right or
movie.
like at least
I
getting
should have looked
drunk.
for
Like
something.
this film definitely needed another level. Like I think there's probably like 4 or 5 musical numbers that come up out of nowhere. Like they're not set up. It's just like I'm looking at you, I'm saying something, and now we're rowing boats and singing our fight song, or like Tucker doing the thing during the will, or like showing up to the ladies, and how it goes from that like fun crazy like kooky like bonkers
Yeah,
to Jack becoming Jack the Ripper like when
which
he
gets
goes
very
to
dark.
yeah
Yeah.
it goes to literal like insanity, and that's something that I enjoy. Like I love researching, or I used to anyway, about serial killers and just like how like the psychological torment or whatever to go through to become that kind of person. Like reading Devil in the White City last year was an awesome read. Like everyone should read it before Leo makes his movie. And I couldn't really make sense of it. Like, I get it. Like, he stopped being JC, started being Jack, and he's so crazy that the only Jack he could think of is Jack the Ripper. Like, he has that really cool scene where he's in the attic and he sings that song where it was like the six until someone got close and then it was five or whatever. I don't know it. I'm not British. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And you get even better. You get that sequence where his aunt is like trying to seduce him, and it's
they,
like,
like he imagines a completely different setting. Like, that's probably the one big stylistic flourish in this movie that was really cool.
Well, there's like another one later, but when he just walks past that planter and it turns into Victorian London, like that transition was so seamless, so perfect. Like, everything about it, I was like, oh, it just went from like an absurd black comedy to something really dark. Like, this is a whole nother thing. Like, this is the loving man of God. This is the loving God. This is Jesus Christ. To he becomes a brutal Lord, which is like the same thing, just a different way of saying it. Like, he's literally a Lord. And so the whole movie, he thinks he is the Lord, our God. And at the end of the movie, he becomes a literal Lord. Like, he wasn't crazy. The problem was that he was crazier than they wanted him to be. And
like, that's the big takeaway for this movie for me too, is that if you like, regardless of him being crazy, like, just as far as the personalities that people are willing to accept as normal, like the fact that at a position of his, if he says he's Jesus Christ and spreads messages of love and just pure positivity,
oh, he's fucking crazy, kick him
of
out of the
they're
family.
just gonna look at him like he's fucking nuts. And then when he is fucking Jack the Ripper and he's talking about bringing back hangings, you know, the strong must punish the weak and all that shit. Yeah, like punishment and instilling fear. Like,
everyone loves him. Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that, like, you know, he says that and they applaud him, and you even have his fucking cousin like up on the balcony.
You're
going,
one of us.
Yeah, you're one of us now. Like, how fucked up is it? And that's kind of true, because it's like, how fucked up is it that we're willing to accept in our leaders, like, just like fucking hostility and rage and just like them trying to like inject fear. Like, that is seen as leadership, but anything that like is positive as far as loving and caring and, you know, just general goodness, that's seen as insane. Like, that's real food for thought, because I think, like, yeah, that is the knee-jerk reaction to perceive that. Like, you know, to some extent, even this election shows that. Yeah, like, it's things like that where, like, it brings it around, like, for me to think, like, yeah, you know what, like, this is somewhat a fitting pick, even if it's not about our American democracy. Like,
sort of, but I mean, Bernie Sanders was kind of like the Jesus in this movie.
Yeah,
like, he was doing.
Look at what happened to me.
Yeah, he's doing all the right
what
things.
Happened to him?
Saying,
sorry,
yeah, not you. You know, he did all the right things, said all the right things, knew all the right people, real nice, like peace, love, and happiness, smoke weed, you know, all that stuff. Bernie Sanders, and we didn't want him. We wanted Hillary.
Actually, a better way to put it is that Gary Johnson is the Jesus of this movie.
I haven't followed his politics.
Oh, well, he's done some pretty funny, questionable things on the news. Yeah, like, he looks pretty kooky.
I don't know what to think about this movie. Like, it's definitely it's very funny. There's some really iconic moments. Peter O'Toole is great. I don't know anyone else's name in the cast, but they're pretty good too. I love the wardrobes in the house and the Jack the Ripper stuff and the Jesus stuff and so many lines. Like, it's not necessarily topical, but it's still, even though it's like 40 years old, it's still accurate. Like, it's an interesting portrayal of power, and it's a really interesting satirical look at, like, why do we respect and kind of like idolize and even worship to a certain extent these kind of people. And yet at the same time, I'm like, okay, but I already knew this.
There's also problems, and I mean, like, you know, this is an actor's movie. Like,
yeah,
I guess that's the best way to put it. Like, you know, like Peter Medak, even with The Changeling, like, you know, he that's not a very stylistic movie, and it's still had a spooky feel, but really the performances in that movie are great. Here, like, it's great watching all these actors work. This movie, absolutely, it's still funny. That final point still lands, but it really just kind of drags. It's like, and not only is it like for moments like that I mentioned where, you know, I felt like they could have been cut, but even then I feel like it could have gone farther. You know, you have a guy saying he's Jesus, and how is that going to work? Like, you know, as far as like church, like and the bishop being just kind of uneasy about that. It's like, well, I feel
Who's
like
also part of the family.
it's like, granted they were kind of covering that up, like, but I just feel like there could have been more there. Like, there could have been more said, as opposed to just like, oh, how fucking crazy that these people of the ruling class, how batshit insane that they are, and they're the ones responsible for ruling an entire country. Like, just, it's not just the backstabbing within the family, but I just feel like it could have tied in by saying some things about religion as well, and that is where there is a bit of a lost opportunity for
Almost
me. Like,
they
almost, but
they
it's not
kind
quite
of touch
there.
on that. Like there's like jokes
But
like, "Oh,
it's
I'm Methodist. Like, don't you still believe in
but it's
God?"
not
Like,
really well. It's really brushed off real quick, and it's like, I feel like there was, at least if for 2.5 hours, something there could have been done. Maybe, I don't know. Like, this, maybe this works better in the play. I don't know. Like, it's not something. I'm glad I saw it. I wouldn't buy it for $1, but like, it's frustrating because it's like there's so much good stuff here, and yet like it doesn't balance out for me in a package that's necessarily entertaining. Like, it definitely does drag. This is a joke that is dragged on, and like there were moments where I was losing interest, sadly.
oh no, I definitely lost interest. Like I was checking my phone. Did someone text me?
Yeah,
I got a phone call that I missed when I was watching it. I stopped the movie right at the middle where I have to imagine the intermission would be if
yeah.
this was a
Like, there
play.
was a pause for me
Yeah,
too.
like
Like, I was
I
like, I'm gonna go get
yeah,
dinner right
I
now.
answered like I called someone, like I figured something out, and yeah, it drags so hard. Like it's a good movie. It's just you really, really want to have to watch this,
Hmm.
and it's like with that being said, like this is the epitome of the just watch the funny parts on YouTube type of film.
Well, it's like, but there are so many of them. It's like, how do you manage that? Because like, I tried thinking of like, okay, well, what funny parts can you cut out? Like, almost all the Jesus stuff, like minus a few things just for the sake of time. But like, there's so much of it that's really funny, and like I cannot keep track. Like, all the little things they sing, like, oh, bless the grasshopper,
Hmm.
and you too, W.C. Fields, like all the shit like that. I'm just kind of like laughing at, like, to myself, just because it's, I mean, like, fucking, Peter O'Toole. Like, I don't really give a shit about Lawrence of Arabia. I would definitely
Yeah,
watch him again in this. Like,
yeah,
this was fun,
it's
but yeah, like, I mean, and like I said, I will definitely, maybe I'll like talk about Kremlin plots or something, like, as an inside joke in this show. I don't like. There's so many things here that are memorable that, like, it's just like, for the sake of comedy. Like, I'm glad I saw a lot of this stuff. I just, man,
it's a
there's a
little
good movie here. There's
it's
a great movie here. It's just not in a package that I really feel is strong.
like I'm not really a fan of absurdist comedy or even black comedy to that point. Like I this film is funny just because it is. Like Peter O'Toole's so over the top. Like it's a character that you're not gonna be likely to forget. Like he's playing Jesus, you know?
Hmm.
But at the same time, I don't really want to remember it. Like there's the likelihood of encountering someone that's seen this and for you to quote it and for them
It's
to get
very
it
low, yeah.
is like impossibly low. Like there's no way. Just yeah, like even if they're a Criterion Collection snob, they probably haven't seen this one. Like I doubt this is being streamed right now on Filmstruck, you know? Like this isn't
Like,
the
there isn't
top
a
hit.
Blu-ray of this, I think, right now. Like, I could only find a DVD of this, and it was one of the older Criterion ones, so I don't think it's been updated. Like, there were cigarette burns
Yeah,
on
there were
this blue,
cigarette
like,
barns in mine too, so
yeah. So it's like you could see where the reels are changing.
yeah, I can't buy this. I mean, I buy that it's a good watch, that it's historically important, that the play is probably really funny, and if you're British, it's probably like the funniest thing you've ever seen because it's very, very British. But at the same time, it's like, um,
Well, it's, at the
yeah.
same time, I guess it might be dated in the sense of, like, it has that X rating, so that does set an expectation there. But it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it's crazy, but hey, I mean, that one soliloquy from Grace is like, well, even that is tame by today's
Like
standards.
that's not the thing that it was just it's the murder, it's the slight
Yeah, then
nudity,
like the
it's
content
the
as well, but it's like,
it's
and
somewhat
it
the
is.
content, but it's like there's blasphemy throughout. It's sacrilegious, like it's anti. It's like God kill the queen, basically. Like if you were in
But these are
Britain
things
in the
like, yeah, for
70s, though,
1972,
yeah,
yeah, and that's where it's like, well, the climate really does feel different, and it just doesn't
it
have that much shock value,
there's a
sadly.
reason
But
why the rating board was not the MPAA for this. Like that was retained
yeah,
for the Criterion Collection for not artistic reasons.
Preservation purposes.
Exactly. It's like, okay, well, once upon a time in this country, this film was so like absurd, and they didn't want anyone to watch it, that they gave it this rating, that you were not supposed to see it, and they try to make it a point to do so. Like, this would be called a video nasty. Like, they did not want this out there, and it makes perfectly, like, it's logical why. Like, this, if enough people saw this, you would have anarchy. Like, you would have chaos. Like, people would be like, yeah, why do we listen to them? Why do they get this special place? Why do we have this this form of government? Thanks for listening. We hope it's been a pleasure. If you like this show and you want to hear more of our wonderful voices on a weekly basis, check out 2 Cents. I'll recap what's happened in film, TV, and tech news.
We're also on the titular Dollar Review Show, a spoiler-free critique of new releases or anything we've discovered on our own, whether that be TV, music, etc.
You can find all of our content at dollarreviews.net. Follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook at Dollar Reviews.
And we're also on Google Play Music, iTunes, Pocket Cast, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, just about anywhere on the internet with hours of content available to you for free. But for those of you that feel that the show is worth your dollar, you can send us a donation at patreon.com/dollarreviews. Contributions not only earn our undying love, but they also make it possible for us to improve our recording equipment and to give you the highest quality episodes possible. But more importantly, they'd be helping us acquire the content to review. You know, trips to the multiplex are expensive, and the more donations we receive, the more films we can review for your listening pleasure.
If you listen somewhere we're currently not available, you'd like to contribute some talking points, send a Death to Cinema request, or if you just want to laugh at us, you can do so by reaching out to us on social media or send an email to brian@dollarreviews.net.
Or you can email me as well, steve@dollarreviews.net.
You can follow me personally on Twitter at Brian Gillis, that's BRYONGILLIS, and now you know how to spell the email too, and also under the same name on the lovely site Letterboxd, which acts as my film diary, where I rate films that I'm watching, write the occasional review, and even sometimes compile lists.
You can also find me on Twitter at S_MTX, and also follow my film diary at Letterboxd under the same name, where I log everything I watch, and sometimes write brief reviews.
That's it for this week. Until next time, keep the change.